Fantastic. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you guys again for joining us today for Powerful Fact Finding, presented by the Independent Life Insurance Agent Association. Today we're going to talk about how fact finding is really a truly crucial part of your overall sales presentation, how you can use the fact finder to actually ramp up your sales presentation and make more sales over time and right away. First things first, what is a fact finder? A fact finder is the point in the sales process where you're really painting the client's picture. It's an exploration of your client's needs and of your client's wants. It's a place for you to find additional insurability, and it's really useful in later reviews as well, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. In short, a fact finder is where you're going through and you're discussing with your client everything about their current financial situation, their health situation, their needs, their hopes, their wants, and how you as an agent and an advisor can help them get from where they are to where they want to be. A lot of times when you sit down with a client, they're going to come to you with one very specific need or very specific problem, and it's your job in the fact finder to help them figure out how to solve that problem and how they can prevent other problems from coming up in the future. I like to think of the fact finder as being the insurance doctor. When you go to a doctor, say you have a broken arm. You go to your doctor, you say, hey, my arm's broken. The doctor's going to go through a real quick fact finder with you. Okay, where does it hurt? What happened? How did you do it? Does it hurt when I push here? Okay, based on the information you've given me, this is the course of treatment. We need to put a cast on it. Here's some pain medication. It's a very simple, very straightforward form of a fact finder. Because what's happened there is you've gone in with a specific ailment. The doctor has asked you a few specific questions to narrow down your unique situation and figure out what the best course of action is going to be for you. And then they've prescribed a solution to you based on the information that you've given them. Insurance works the same way. A client comes to you with a specific concern, problem, issue, whatever. They say, hey, I've got this insurance pain, I've got this financial pain, I need to get this straightened out. You ask them a few questions to ascertain their unique situation, and then based on the information they provided to you, you prescribe an insurance solution to them. Now, when you go to your doctor, your arm's broken, and you're sitting in front of them, they say, we'll probably ought to set the bone and put a cast on it. Do you come back and say, a cast is really too expensive, or, I'd really like to take a look at some herbal remedies for having my bones back inside my body? No. When you sit down with your doctor and you tell them what hurts and they tell you how to fix it, bam, you go with it. Because they're your doctor. They went to medical school. They know what they're talking about. That's the same air of confidence you're trying to build in your insurance presentation. Your client comes to you with their problem, you figure out what their unique situation is, and you prescribe their solution. And you don't have all these objections that come up at the very end. You don't have all these concerns and problems and second guessing by your client, because you're the expert, you're the advisor, and you've proven that to them with the power of your fact finder. When you go to your doctor, you know why you're there. You know your need, or your pain, in other words. And you describe that to your doctor, and they figure out your unique solution. When your client comes to you, they know what their pain is, and it's up to you to prescribe that unique solution to them as well. So, first things first, why is the client here? What is that unique problem they have? What's that pain that's brought them to you and that's made them willing to talk about insurance for hours on end? What is their primary concern? And how can that be addressed with insurance? This can be anything from planning for college to retirement planning to mortgage protection to income insurance to key person insurance or whatever. It could be any of a million different problems that your client has, and it's up to you to talk to them about that problem in terms of what you can do about it. When you go to your doctor and you say, yeah, I fell off my bike and I broke my arm, they don't say, well, the solution is don't ride bikes anymore. No, they say the solution is put a cast on it, set the bone, etc. When your client comes to you and they say, I've got this problem, what can we do? You're not going to talk to them about investing in stocks and bonds. You're not necessarily going to talk to them about being more frugal at home and eating in instead of eating out. You're going to address their problems from an insurance standpoint, just like a doctor is going to address your problems from a medical standpoint. when you put the problem in the client's unique context, you take away the one-size-fits-all mentality that a lot of agents bring to the table. There's an old saying, and it's very cheesy, but it rings true. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Your clients don't really care how educated you are, how long you've been in the business, or how good you are at selling insurance until they know that you care about their specific situation, the problem they're having, the situation they are in. If you try to put a client in a one-size-fits-all solution, you may get a few quick sales, but you'll build customers, not clients. If you take the time to sit down with your client, discuss with them their problems, their goals, their needs, their pain, and help put their unique situation in their personal context, they're going to understand how much you care about them, and that's going to build a client for life. One thing I like to do during a fact finder is point at different periods in the client's lifespan. Like, they're 30 now, what's going to happen 20 years from now when you're 50? And say, okay, what would happen if you passed away here? What would happen if this year, 20 years in the future, you had a stroke and you needed to go on long-term care or assisted living? What would happen to you financially? What would happen to your family financially? What would happen to your income, etc.? This is a really great way to sit down with your client after you've discussed their current income, their current assets, and their current liabilities, and gotten a feel for their current financial picture, pointing out different stages in their life where, okay, if something happened here, what would you do? If something happened here, what would you do? And how that could affect the people around them. Well, if I passed away here, it might mean my kids couldn't go to college. If I passed away here, it might mean, my wife lost the house. Pointing at those different stages in a client's life allows you to point out areas where additional insurability may be necessary. It really is a very powerful way to illustrate to your client the importance of ongoing life insurance coverage, of ongoing long-term care coverage, of ongoing health insurance coverage. Because at any point, if you leave those doors open, disaster can strike. Now, of course, it's probably not going to. Let's be realistic. The majority of people, well, not the majority, most people, I would say, are not going to have, a serious financial event, specifically 10 years from now, that causes their children to not be able to go to college. But if it did happen, the consequences would be absolutely devastating. It would be life-changing for the people around them. So planning for those eventualities now is a great way to make sure that the people that you care about are taken care of. It probably won't happen, but if it did, the consequences would be absolutely devastating. So take a look at the client's life and how their needs are going to evolve over time. 20 years from now, the kids are out of college, it's just you and your wife, you and your husband at home together. What would happen if one of you suddenly needed assisted living? What would happen if one of you had a stroke and needed a caretaker? What would happen if one of you passed away? What would happen to the people you leave behind? These are things that life insurance can help plan for. And on the more positive side, where do you want to be in 10 years? Where do you want to be in 20 years? How can annuities, cash value style insurance help you build the assets you need to get there? You're going to find this out by discussing your client's goals with them, not just the potential negative pitfalls that can happen to them. You can address multiple concerns during a fact finder, and that's totally okay, because what you're wanting to do is paint a picture of the client's current financial picture and current health status, and then take a look at how that's going to change over time, how it's going to evolve. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, your kids getting to go to college, that's not going to be a concern any longer. Your kids will already be out of college. But what concerns will you have then that we're not talking about now? Fact finders, when you take a really broad view like this and look at how a client's needs can change over time, reveal multiple quote-unquote points of insurability. Right now, a client's main concern may be mortgage protection. But once that house is paid off and once the kids are out of college, they're going to have a little bit extra money each month, and they're going to need to start more aggressively planning for retirement. Getting an index universal life policy locked in now at a lower rate is a great strategy, because it's going to allow them to overfund that policy later in life when they're in their peak income years and really set themselves up really well for retirement. There's nothing wrong with blending coverage as well. If you're working with a young couple, for instance, term life insurance may be the best way to go for them right this second to get that cheap, high coverage they need to cover their mortgage and their kids and all this good stuff. But blending in a little bit of indexed universal life or whole life as well can allow them that cash value and insurance that they need to start building for retirement too. One thing I like to ask my clients, and you can ask your clients too, is where were you 5 years ago? And if 5 years from now you had made that same progress, would you be happy with that? Think about your own financial picture. Where were you 5 years ago? And how much have you saved and how much have you grown financially since then? If you made that same growth over the next 5 years, would you be happy or would you want to grow more? What can we do to set you up for greater growth? Having these fact finders on hand is also really strong and really useful for biannual reviews. You should be contacting your clients to set up reviews of their coverage at least once a year, and I prefer to do it every 6 months. If you have fact finders from each one of these reviews on hand, you can bring them to your client and say, look, here's what your needs were 6 months ago, a year and a half ago, and here's what your needs are today. Here's what your fact finder has shown us today. You can see that this has changed, this has changed, this has changed. Your needs have evolved in this way, and it's time for us to update your coverage. It may mean more coverage, it may mean less coverage. For example, if we've got a young couple, that same example from earlier, whose kids have now gone off to college and they've got their mortgage paid down, maybe they need less mortgage protection insurance, and that's going to mean they have more money each month to put into overfunding that indexed universal life policy and start building for their retirement. Clients' needs evolve over time. It's a truism. It's always going to happen. Things are always going to change, and as time goes on, you're going to find that your clients' needs grow and shrink, and you're going to be able to be there for them and address them because these fact finders you've done and the care you've taken to be your client's advisor has shown how much you care about your client, and it sets you up to have them as a client for life. And that's really the true power of fact-finding presented by the Independent Life Insurance Agent Association. It's a great way to set up your clients for life, to make sure they understand how much you care, to logically progress towards selecting a product, and to finding additional points of insurability above and beyond the initial concern that your client may have had. So now we want to open things up for questions. If you guys have any questions, come on down to the left-hand side of your screen in that question and answer chat pane and type them out for us there.